This is the basic statement in the very first paragraph. Now you can read again. And you'll find the statement much more meaningful than what we had started with. It states, the earliest preoccupation of man in his awakened thoughts and as it seems, I have told you to mark the word seems, a historical argument is not conclusive argument, as it seems. His inevitable and ultimate preoccupation. And then he says, why does it seem to be so? Because he gives the example. For it survives the longest periods of skepticism and returns after every banishment. Because of this reason, this is the argument. Therefore it seems is ultimate. But then comes the word is, not seems, but is. Is also the highest which his thought can envisage. It's an ontological argument. So this very statement contains two arguments, a historical argument and an ontological argument. As I said, a philosophical statement should be relating of one fact with the other fact by a process of reasoning, and this form of reasoning can be varied. One of them is a historical argument, another is ontological argument. There are many others which we shall come to later on, but at least in this paragraph you can see clearly the linking of facts by means of historical argument and by means of ontological argument. Now the rest of the paragraph is simply a refinement, a further explication of that aspiration. What is that aspiration? What is it that was earliest? What is it that ultimately remains? What is it that survives after every banishment? This is what Aurobindo now clarifies. It manifests, that aspiration manifests itself in the divination of Godhead. Divination of Godhead. That is to say, there is a deep conjecture. Divination is a conjecture of a special kind. When you divine a thing, it's an English word which actually is both a conjecture and a conjecture which says what it conjectures. When I say I divine a thing, means I divine God. I conjecture God. God must be, divine must be conjectured. Human being without knowing at all, there is one conjecture of man without knowing anything. Whenever he blindly turns around and he feels God is there around me. It's a divination of Godhead. It is like a child who knows there is a breast which can feed it. It is a divination of the child. It cannot, but it conjectures, it doesn't know, it conjectures, a divination. There is a source of nourishment for the child. Man also is a child, and he needs nourishment. All of us need nourishment. We are all, as it were, on the earth in search of nourishment. And whether we like it or not, believe it or not, we are sure that there is nourishment. There is God all around us. It's a divination of Godhead. So, this aspiration of man, because there is this divination, he wants it. And he aspires for it. And he wants to embrace it. He wants to be nourished by it. So, it's a divination of Godhead, the impulse towards perfection. This is another line. All human striving is a striving for perfection. Human striving is never satisfied. You do whatever you like. After aeroplane, what more do you want to have in this world? Still further. Travel to moon, to Jupiter, to Saturn. Even that may not be satisfying. To go into galaxies after galaxies. Even that may not satisfy. We don't even know what more man will strive at. But this is what, there is an impulse towards perfection. The search after pure truth. In the very grain of thought, this is inherent to eliminate error and to affirm truth. In the very grain of thought. All thought movement is nothing but eliminate error and to establish the truth. It's a constant effort of man. All progression is progression towards truth by elimination of error. So this search after pure truth and unmixed bliss. Of course, today people know very well that happiness is the ultimate justification of life. But this word unmixed bliss is very important. Not happiness only, but unmixed bliss. In fact, that is all that human beings ultimately want. The one thing that will satisfy, nothing more. You will have nothing more if that unmixed bliss is obtained. Mere happiness is ephemeral, disappears after some time. Therefore, even that is not satisfying ultimate goal. What it seeks after is unmixed bliss. The sense of a secret immortality. I am immortal. There's a very beautiful sentence of Danton. You know, Danton was the greatest leader of French Revolution. He was the great soul of French Revolution, who raised the masses of people to liberate France from the tyranny of monarchy. In the turn of evolution, as it says, revolution tends to devour its own children. So, Danton was also accused of treason. This very man who was the leader of revolution. Robespierre comes to accuse him, his own master, his own inspirer. And circumstances of the history were such that he was required to put Danton in the prison and the court of law. And he was charged that he has committed treason, acted against the very highest interests of the nation. It is he who liberated France. But such was the irony of history. He was put before the court. And it was known that if it is proved that he had committed treason, the only punishment was guillotine, to kill him. Death was the only punishment. So one of the arguments of Danton, when he is asked to defend him, he says, you strive that I should be guillotined. But you don't know, je suis immortel. You don't know I am immortal. You see the cry of the individual, the real aspiration of man. You try to destroy me, I am indestructible. Je suis immortel, I am immortal. And this secret sense of immortality is vibrating in all of us. Whether you like it or not, you want to affirm it or not, you want to question it, it doesn't matter. Your aspiration, you being you cannot but seek immortality. And Aurobindo says, read the Veda, earliest preoccupation of man. What was the highest there in earliest time? Amritatvaya gatum. It is the path to immortality. That was sought after in the Veda. Read the Veda. It's proved right from that time, even today. Now we try to have longevity. What is this whole... Why do we have so many drugs? Why so much of inquiry into surgery of various kinds? Longevity. It's a search for immortality. So Aurobindo says that the human aspiration of mankind can be termed as a divination of godhead. As a search after truths, unmixed bliss, and a sense of secret immortality. Now Aurobindo says, the ancient dawns of human knowledge have left us their witness to this constant aspiration. This is the argument, a kind of evidence. Evidence is put forward that this aspiration was also earliest, which is also now. So he says, ancient dawns of human knowledge have left us their witness to this constant aspiration. That's why Aurobindo begins with these two statements from Rig Veda. If you read the Rig Veda and you see the aspiration that is described in the Rig Veda, is this aspiration. Today, now if you see the present day, right from that day to today we see a humanity satiated but not satisfied by victorious analysis of the externalities of nature, preparing to return to its primeval longings. We are returning again to the same constant search of man. And therefore Aurobindo says, the earliest formula of wisdom promises to be its last. God, light, freedom, immortality. So you might say that you can close the book now. This is all that Aurobindo wants to say in the whole book, that mankind's aspiration is God, light, freedom, immortality. And that this is aspiration is philosophically the only proposition that can be justified. Ontological argument is also given. So the whole argument of the book is completed in the very first paragraph. This is called the massive argument, in which the whole mass is presented in a few words with premise, argumentation, conclusion. Everything is given, complete. Now, if you want to read, however, if you have time, leisure, we shall read further. I have got leisure, but we shall have leisure, no doubt. At least one full chapter I want to read with you because it will give a complete idea, the briefest idea of what the whole book contains. Now, after having stated this, you know, when you create a symphony, the mark of a symphony is, in the very first movement, it is complete. At the end of its completion, something still can stir. A few tunes are allowed to stir. And out of that, a new harmony begins to be built up. And again comes to an end, out of which the third harmony starts. This is the great artistic experience of a musician. Also, the artistic experience of a painter is the same thing. All visions of artists have a massiveness of a kind, in which a figure appears which contains everything. Even a dot indicates the whole. Similarly, having said all that is to be said in the very first paragraph, now the new strains of thought begin to arise out of it. If somebody were a musician and he were to put the first chapter into a kind of a harmony, he would have a great theme here, the first dong, and then out of that strains of musical tunes coming out of it, and then a new harmony being established. In a way, you might say the life divine is one of the greatest artistic expressions of philosophical thought. It's not only a philosophical work, it's also a great artistic work. Sri Aurobindo was a supreme artist, basically. As he says, I am fundamentally a poet. He says, I'm not a philosopher, I'm a poet. And a poet is a supreme artist. And therefore the whole work of Life Divine is an artistic presentation of a philosophical thought. And now you see here how you enjoy the movement of thought. Having stated this, he summarizes God, light, freedom, immortality as these great ideals. These are the ideals. This very definition of ideals is important. Sri Aurobindo recognizes that although these have been the aspirations, these aspirations can be described as ideals. Ideals in the sense that these are beckoning luminary stars somewhere high. They are the magnets of mankind, towards which mankind is driven irresistibly. So these ideals, now comes what I call dialectical reasoning. I spoke of historical argument, ontological argument. Now comes a dialectical argument. What is a dialectical argument? A dialectical argument is the statement of facts which are set in terms of comparison, contrast, thesis, antithesis, the contrast between truth and falsehood, contrast between validity and invalidity, and out of that deriving a conclusion. This is a dialectical reasoning. Now comes this for, in the next paragraph, is a statement of a dialectical reasoning. These great ideals, these are facts. Man has aspired for it. But they are in direct contradiction of actualities. The actualities are in diametrical opposition